Hello. I'm so glad to be here with you this morning. Morning for me, anyway. So, I am talking to you all about going slow to go fast. If you're a highly sensitive high achiever, you have huge dreams for your life, for the world. Um, I'm raising my desk up a little bit. Hi there. You have huge dreams for your life and for the world. You want to make a big impact with your work. And basically, I am here to help talk to you all about how do we do this in a sustainable way? How do we do this in a way where we don't burn ourselves out? And this is where this go slow to go fast principle comes in. So if you're just joining me, hi, good to see you. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Branwyn. Hi. Hi, not Nuksha. Good to see you. Um, so I'm live here on Instagram and on YouTube. I'm curious, what is a big dream that you have for yourself professionally in your personal life that you're like, I know I must do this thing? And maybe you feel a sense of pressure around it. Maybe you're grappling with a part of yourself that's like, TikTok, let's go. Like, you don't, no time to waste. And you see yourself being burnt out, and you're like, gosh, am I ever going to be able to accomplish this thing? So if you are here, I would love to see you share that in the comments because I would love to be able to work with some of your real life examples and situations of this sense of urgency. And before we jump into like the specific how-tos and tactics, I'll share a little bit about my own journey with this sense of urgency. For a really long time, I wanted to sing. I knew I wanted to be a singer ever since I was, yeah, probably around age 10-ish. Um, Branwyn says, reaching the world championships for Irish dancing. Woo! Yes! I'm like, you can do it. I'm so excited for you. Anyway, thank you so much for sharing. And yes, if anyone else is watching and you're like, I want to share, let's go. Let's put that out there and make it a little bit more real. Naming things can bring up a lot of the parts of us that are like nervous about accomplishing it, that are nervous about whether or not we are capable of it. And again, this is like a lot of what we're going to be addressing here because a lot of those feelings are what's fueling this like urgency that tends to steamroll over anything else in our lives, like getting enough sleep or making sure that we're moving enough or making sure that we're having enough pleasure and joy in our life. Um, so, yeah, back to my own experience and story. So, I knew that I wanted to sing for a really long time. I even said, growing up, I'm like, hey, parents, I want to take voice lessons. I want to sing. I would think I would actually like to do this instead of doing violin. And they were like, nope, too much time and energy invested in violin. We're not going to spend the time on this. Like, you've already put in so much work in this other area. Like, it's not happening. And then actively got angry with me whenever I would bring it up. So then I kind of gave up on that when I was in high school. Then when I was in conservatory, I was like, ooh, what if I took voice lessons? And I ended up taking some lessons from one of my peers who was learning pedagogy and just totally lit up through that experience. But again, that was like trial lessons as she was learning how to teach. Um, then probably like 7 years later, I had switched careers. I was in tech. I was like, okay, time to take voice lessons. Started working with a wonderful teacher. Hi, Lucy. Good to see you. I started working with a wonderful teacher who her training was in more of like a musical theater and opera type background. And that wasn't really what I was interested in doing anymore. And then also, she wasn't really attuned to this growing sense of pressure inside of me, this growing sense of urgency of like, I've wasted so much time. I've said yes to so many other things that I haven't wanted to really do that actually don't matter to me. I was in this cycle that so many of my clients are in of I am pushing myself to take care of other people. I'm overriding my boundaries. I'm saying yes to things that I really don't want to say yes to. I'm telling myself that I should be happy and be satisfied with, the things that I'm being essentially like roped into doing, where I'm allowing myself to be roped into doing. But even underneath that, there was that like both resentment and urgency building up of like frustration with myself that I wasn't dedicating the time that I really wanted to be dedicating towards learning to be a singer. And then whenever how that would show up is whenever I would sit down to practice at that time, this was like 5, 6 years ago at this point. Whenever I would sit down to practice, I would start doing, vocal warm-ups, exercises, etc. And I would just instantly judge, like, whatever the result was, this sense of urgency and pressure would instantly judge whatever was happening and be like, "That sounds terrible. You're never gonna get there. Like, if this is how it sounds, you know, now, like, you have so far to go before you get to where you wanna go. You're never gonna get there. It's gonna take so long. Like, why did you waste all of this time, like, not doing the things that you wanted to do?" Let me know in the chat below if you can resonate with anything that I am sharing right now about this, like, kind of inner monologue. Again, I know that so many of my clients have this kind of urgency and pressure. So I was able to, again, through my own, like the things that I've learned, and I now basically teach my clients how to relate to themselves differently. Um, I was able to kind of like loosen the intensity around this urgency so that I could be right there in the moment. And we're going to end by talking about like what are all the emotions that are underneath this urgency. First, I want to provide a little bit of kind of like logistical, scientific, um, nervous system awareness about why letting go of urgency is an important, or kind of loosening the grip on this urgency is an important thing to do and an important thing to face if you genuinely want to like love your way into the great success that you aspire to create and accomplish in your life. So, when it comes to learning happens when we are in a state of relative regulation. We are stretching ourselves a little bit, but there's still a large part of us that feels safe to be right here, right now. And what this is called is it's actually called the zone of proximal development. You can like look up articles about this. So there's the comfort zone, which is like basically the automated habits that we already have, like the things that we can do on autopilot, the things that we don't have to think about, the things that feel natural, fluent, and easy. Um, and this is what you've already mastered. This is what you already know. So things like walking for most people, driving a car, brushing your teeth, maybe certain aspects of like if you're a dancer, like certain steps, like you can do them without really having to concentrate or think exceptionally hard. Then, so this is where people I think already get it wrong. People are like, bust out of your comfort zone. You have to like go so far out of your comfort zone in order to like succeed and do anything new and like, grow, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you do have to get out of your comfort zone, but you have to be in the zone of proximal development, i.e., what I call like the Goldilocks zone. Not too easy, not too hard, just right. So, this Goldilocks zone is the place where you feel intrigued, excited, like a little fluttery in your stomach, but like you're still able to like be in your surroundings. You can still feel your body like in the chair. You're still able to take in sensory data like the sunlight that's coming in. Um, you're still able to be curious about what's happening and basically the intense inner monologue hasn't like fully taken over yet. That's what this Goldilocks zone is, and how I want to invite you to think about this Goldilocks zone or identify where that lives in your body and what it's like for you is let's take yeah, think of whatever goal that you're pursuing right now and think of like what's the next milestone that you want to accomplish. And then you're breaking down like, okay, in order to accomplish that milestone. So for me, I just sang at an open mic my own original music for the first time. And one of the songs that I did was a really high belting song that I wrote myself, right? So I'm like excited to show this music. That experience I learned through my own just experimentation. That was a little bit too far outside of my Goldilocks zone. That was in what we call like what I'm calling the fight or flight slash survival zone. And this is not the place where you can actually learn sustainably without, you know, essentially causing excess buildup of stress that will be a little bit harder to process and cumulatively over time, not saying this to stress you out in any way, but just for your own awareness, cumulative cumulatively over time, if you are constantly in the survival mode zone, which is like outside of this Goldilocks zone, where you're not able to remain curious about what's happening. You are no longer feeling the sensations in your body that are neutral to pleasant alongside the little bit of excitement and the little bit of challenge. Um, if you forget to pee, if you forget to eat, if you forget to move your body, if you just forget straight up that you have a body, if you like kind of the wheels start falling off the cart in many different areas of your life. Those are clues that you are operating in the survival zone as you're going about pursuing this goal. And so those are some clues. Again, I'm really curious, like when you think about this yourself, I want to invite you to reflect on what are the signatures inside of myself that show me that I am in this survival zone versus the Goldilocks zone, that zone of proximal development where I can be a little bit stretched, a little bit challenged. It feels exciting. I feel maybe a little bit doubtful, but I'm like, ooh, I want to try. I want to try and see if I can do it. It's that feeling. That's the Goldilocks zone, this zone of proximal development. And then, the comfort zone is like, snooze, boring. Like, I could do this in my sleep. So get really curious. What do these things feel like for you in your own body? This is what I want to invite you to begin contemplating. So let me go back to what I was saying. This zone of proximal development, the Goldilocks zone, this is where sustainable learning can occur. When you are able to be resourced, essentially, be present enough in your body that the stress hormones aren't what's fueling your action. It is curiosity and playfulness and excitement that's fueling your action. That is what is going to allow you to continue showing up for that activity in a way where you get enough reps in that you build muscle memory. Let's talk about what muscle memory actually really is. So, muscle memory, this is so fascinating to me, and I know this is going to be fascinating to you. So, probably you think about muscle memory as something that is like a physical thing that you practice. You learn how to ride a bike, you learn how to play guitar, you learn how to tie your shoes, you learn how to brush your teeth, you learn how to do, I don't know, certain kind of handshake or something. Just thinking of examples. So you think of it as something that you do physically with your body. Really, muscle memory is about getting the right neurons to fire together and like wire together, i.e., They know how to coordinate, like your nervous system, your actual neurons in your brain know the right ways to connect with each other to accomplish that movement with more and more efficiency. And the more repetitions that you get in of the thing that you want, the outcome that you want, this is why it's not practice makes perfect, it's practice makes permanent. So whatever you repeat over and over again is actually what builds fluency and ease, because those neurons are just, as you repeat an action the same way over and over again, your biology is like, ooh, this seems to be important to this person. We're going to allocate more resources to making sure this is really easy to do, which means that it makes more and more of those neurons go, we love each other. And then it makes that action actually a lot easier. So, what we think of as muscle memory, like for me, I'm doing violin because that was my biggest area of muscle memory that I learned. Muscle memory is actually just getting the neurons in our brain to talk to each other more and more efficiently. So, why am I talking about this? Because in order to show up consistently enough to get those reps in of the action that you actually want to be taking and making it fluent and making it easy, you need to literally just be able to show up enough for that to happen. And if you are in a state of fight or flight, essentially, if you're in this survival zone, it's going to be really hard to like actually want to do it. So that's why there's this push pull going on of like, I really want to like, do the world championships of Irish dance. And I like, this is something I really long for. But then I don't know if this is true for you necessarily, Branwyn, the person whose example I'm using right now, but there might be another part of you that's like, fuck no. Like, no, I'm not going to do this because it's used to there being so much stress all around the experience of pursuing this thing, either because the way that you're chunking your activity is a little bit too large, and so therefore it's a little bit too big of a leap to like be able to do the things that you want to do to get towards your goal, or the narrative that you have is just so fundamentally stressful that it's like just straight up in a fight or flight state from the very beginning. Yep, says Branwyn, you are not alone. And I know so many other people can relate with this. And again, this is like literally the story of my whole life up until a couple of years ago. So let's start talking about, like, we've already talked a little bit about how you can actually use the sensations in your body to right size your effort towards a goal. So for me, let me go back to my open mic example. For me, what I realized, because I was more in the survival zone in this recent open mic experience than I really wanted to be, and I know is sustainable. What I realized I need to do is basically chunk it down a little bit, like smaller, so that I can teach my body that it is safe to do these things. So instead of doing high belting and having it be my own original song at the same time, both of those things are super vulnerable for me personally, because these are both skills that I'm building. Skill number one, being vulnerable about my own art in public. Skill number two, high belting in front of other people. That's also very vulnerable for me. So instead of having those two things together, I'm going to be tackling them separately for the next maybe like month, maybe 2 months. We'll see. But by giving myself the opportunity to not be in fight or flight, I know I'm going to be training it into my body that this is safe to do these things faster. And so therefore, I'm more likely to keep engaging, more likely to keep showing up, because I'm separating these out into like the appropriate chunks rather than smushing them together and then telling myself, you have to do this. And then, being in some like crazy fight or flight state and then not having the experience of success that I know is actually supportive for me continuing down this path. So that's the first way that we can avoid this survival zone where fight or flight is coming up. And the next thing I want to talk about is this urgency, this narrative that is so powerful, so intense, so strong around like you've wasted so much time. You're never going to do it. You said you're going to do it for years and you haven't. And so how do you know you're not going to do the same thing in the future? Again, if this is the narrative that you're experiencing, you are not alone and nothing is wrong with you. You just have grief that you need to process. I know this is what was fueling my urgency for years, years and years and years. This intense perfectionism, this intense self criticism, saying, ugh, that sound that came out of your mouth, like, who would listen to that? Like, literally, as soon as I would start to try to practice, like, I'm literally just warming up my body. But this intense inner critic, this intense perfectionist was like right there from the get. And basically was like, I'm just going to shut this shit down. Like, as anything that comes out of her mouth that isn't like, Celine Dion level amazing, we're just going to shut that shit down. Um, that part of us, that part of you is covering up grief, anger, frustration, things that are much more core underneath that need to be felt, that need to be experienced and moved through your body in order to lessen the intensity. Because if we think about this intense inner critic, this urgency, this push energy, which might have a benevolent like message actually, which is like, this is precious to me. I really care about this. I want to make sure that I'm like doing what I'm put here to do. Like this dream is in my heart for a reason. And like I know that I'm meant to do this, so, like, why can't I get myself to do this? There is that, like, benevolent flavor underneath often this, like, perfectionist and inner critic. Um, I see that there's a question coming in. I'm gonna read that in a minute, um, but so what we need to do is, like, underneath the frustration and the anger is usually emotions like grief, sadness, hopelessness, doubt, these much more kind of like existentially pervasive emotions of like, I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll succeed. And that part of us, or maybe that voice is also saying, like, I'm just so sad. I'm so sad that I've tried so many times and I keep on not making the progress that I've wanted to make, at least so far. I'm sad. That sadness needs to be held. That sadness needs to be wrapped up in a hug and seen and acknowledged. And there's a wise, adult, wide, divine part of you that needs to wrap up that little part of you, that sadness. Maybe it's the younger version of you, and say, I see you. I see how much this matters to you, and I see this pain, and I'm here. And just allow yourself to let that, like, cry. Allow yourself to be hugged by someone in your life if there's someone who you can lean on to, like, just be there and hold that space for you. This is work that I do with my clients, is like holding space for them and the grief that needs to move through them. Find a space or a place. It could be alone, it could be in nature, it could be with another human, where you can just allow this grief to be here and feel it. Hmm. And you might have to sit with this when you're first really beginning to shift how you relate to yourself and shift this urgency. You might need to do this a number of times at the beginning, especially if you've had this kind of push pull relationship with your dreams and goals for a long time. years, decades, maybe. This is a backlog of emotion that is basically unfelt that you're going to need to take a little bit of time to feel. So, again, the first few times that I did this with myself in my own singing journey, I mean, again, we sometimes we think that it's going to take a lot more time to process emotion than it actually takes. An emotion un uninterfered with by thoughts and stories that we continue to tell ourselves, it rises and falls and moves through our body in 90 seconds. That's the literal physiological time it takes to feel a feeling all the way through. Isn't that wild? That always, like, blows my mind, but the thing is we're so used to, like, creating more stories and creating more interpretations with our mind about what our sadness means, what our grief means, what our anger means about, that other person or what it means about ourselves. If you can just be with the sensations, just keep inviting yourself to redirect back to the pure experience of that emotion, that constriction in your chest, that tension in your throat, that like goosebump prickly feeling on your skin, whatever it is. Just be with that and like allow it to move you. Maybe you need to shake, maybe you need to moan, yell, like just letting yourself actually really fully experience that emotion and letting it pass through you. It won't take as long as you think, but in each individual instance, actually it'll probably take about 5 to 10 minutes in my own personal experience. And then you'll be like, "Wow, okay. I feel clearer. I feel more spacious." And that curiosity is alive again all of a sudden. And then you can much more easily figure out how to move forward with, like, well, what's the right next step for me right now? Not right, in some objective sense of perfection that is attainable somehow, which it never is. But like, what is the most supportive next step for me? Maybe that's like practicing a new complicated dance step for like 5 minutes only. And then knowing that you're going to tell yourself, like, I did it. I showed up for my emotions. I showed up for the part of me that is really urgent and I held it with love and care. And I still engaged in the work of building this physical habit or taking actions on this project. And that is a win. That is success because it is. Because again, we want sustainable action. We want the ability to show up with devotion and love for the things that are important to us and for our own bodies and emotions over and over and over again. So, you meeting your emotions where you are right now, and then taking a little tiny bit of, more tangible or stereotypical action towards your goals, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, stacked up day by day by day by day by day. That shit is going to get you to your goal so much freaking faster than this whole urgency frozenness dynamic that just you see me, it's like this rigidity that lives in my body even just thinking about it. And again, I know what this feels like because this was my story for such a long time, which is why I'm so passionate about trying to help you unravel it yourself. So I'm gonna look at these comments. I've had multiple people that offer to sell online, flea markets, time wasters. Why won't they let me pay them to use the more money to use express shipping? I don't really know what that comment is saying. If you can provide a little bit more information about how that relates to um, this dynamic of push pull and achieving your goals, definitely let me know. How do you deal with rage and frustration that comes up when you are overwhelmed? I'm guessing rage and frustration at yourself, rage and frustration at others. For rage and frustration that comes up when you're overwhelmed at yourself, again, I think this is a moment where rage and frustration at ourselves is often a narrative that we've internalized about what it means to be a good person, a productive person, um, what it means to be a valuable member of society. Um, and I know for me, rage and frustration often came up when I was overwhelmed because I was telling myself I wasn't allowed to be a human. I wasn't allowed to have human needs. I wasn't allowed to need to take breaks. I wasn't allowed to only be able to do a little bit at a time. Um, I had internalized this belief about myself that I should be able to be this robot that just like can do literally anything without any concern or need for like any human needs. And the reason why I had that conditioning is because that's how I was raised. I was raised by two narcissistic, like basically diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder parents who needed their children to perform being their best friends, being like their surrogate spouse, being their therapists, being the go-between mediator between them because they fucking hated each other's guts. Um, like they needed, especially me as the older child at first, and then now they basically do the same thing with my sibling. Um, they needed me because they didn't know how to take care of themselves to such a deep degree. They needed me to perform a version of perfection, a version of like ultimate sacrifice of putting my own needs to the side over and over and over again so that I could attend to them. That's how I was raised. That's how I was taught I'm lovable. That's how I was taught I need to be a good person is by attending to the needs of everyone else and basically like believing deeply that I don't have needs and that if I do have needs, like I'm wrong for them. That was my conditioning growing up. And so, of course, when I was frustrated with myself in the past, when I got overwhelmed by things, of course I would be frustrated at my need to use the bathroom and stop working, or my need to like go eat food, or my need to like move my body. Like, and if you were raised with a similar environment, similar conditioning, of course it's going to take a little bit of time to like unravel that narrative and to remind yourself that you are worthy inherently, that you are good, that your humanity is essential, actually. It's an essential part of your existence here and in all of the things that you want to accomplish in the future. Because most of the things that we're creating are for other humans, or at the very least, other animals who also have their own needs. Like nobody's, no robots, at least currently, are expecting us to be a robot. So, man, there's so much we could go into about like colonialism and toxic capitalism, etc. That's a whole separate conversation that we don't have time for. But Elias, I hope that answers your question a little bit about how I would work with yourself if you are rageful and frustrated and angry at yourself for being overwhelmed. If you are experiencing like um anger from other people, again, like they were probably taught some message about like what it means to be a good person and they're like projecting that onto you. Or maybe they have something that they need and they think that they can get this need met by like raging at you if you're overwhelmed. That's a little bit outside the scope of what we're going to talk about today because I'm really focused on like helping you change your relationship with you because that's what's going to help you achieve your incredibly lofty goals of what you want to accomplish in this lifetime with sustainability and with uh, just like aliveness and joy and mastery and vastness and exhilaration. Like, this is the quality of life that I know is possible for you if you're a highly sensitive high achiever. And this is what I'm inviting you into. Like, this is possible for you, but it really relies on you shifting your relationship with yourself. And this is exactly what we just talked about today is like how to do all of that when there's this urgency screaming at you. So, any other thoughts, any other questions? Otherwise, I think I'm going to probably begin to wrap up for today. Please take a moment and like let me know what's coming up for you in the comments, either now if you're here live with me or if you're watching later. And then I want to invite you to a couple of things. Number one, I'm about to make some like exciting announcements about programs that I've got coming up. Um, in December and then like onwards into January. So stay tuned for my Instagram stories for this. I have a free Facebook group that I'm actually going to be creating a free mini course all around micro wins. We talk so much about micro wins here because, again, it's the small sustainable action that actually matters. And so deconstructing the big things that are happen in our lives that are, supposedly good or successful or get us closer to where we want to go, and noticing all the little things that fed into that, all the little tiny decisions moment by moment, that is really like such an important practice. So I'm going to be creating a free mini course inside of our Facebook group community. And then I want to invite people to like come in and talk about their micro wins and like all of the things that they've got going on so that we can support each other in retraining our brains to work sustainably towards our career goals, personal goals, whatever lofty visions we have for our lives. And then, of course, I have the mini course, How to Stop Burning Yourself Out as a High Achiever, Highly Sensitive High Achiever. This mini course covers it all. I do deep dives on like very specific topics or very specific slivers in these lives, but we cover it all in the mini course. It is a private podcast, so you can listen to it on the go. It makes it really easy to consume. I know us busy people, you are someone who is like filling your life up with like a million things all at once, which is amazing. And I know that means that for learning, it makes it a lot easier to do via podcast. So that's why I did the mini course that way. It is $49. I cannot wait for you to jump in and like get all of the goodness out of that mini course. And yeah, lots more exciting announcements to come about new programs, etc., for the month of December and onwards. So thank you so much for being here. Let me know in the comments what resonated with you, or even send me a DM, and I will celebrate you by sending you some little emojis back to be like, I see you. And I will see you in the next live next week. I think it's same place, same time next week. Nope, actually, I'm going to quickly check my calendar. Next week, I'm actually going to do the live on Wednesday next week. So it's going to be Wednesday the 13th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So, and I will make announcements about this like leading up so that we kind of get everybody there on that slightly different day and time. I just have an event that unfortunately I have to move this for, but it's a great event for my own like self-care and all that stuff. So anyway, I look forward to seeing you next week and have a wonderful week until then. Mwah. Bye for now. And YouTube saying goodbye to you. Special goodbye for you. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you around.